Give you a quick update on the housing settlement. Really have two main issues brewing right now. One of them is the federal monitor, and this is kind of scary when you think of it. All of you that have read Animal Farm and 1984 and all those, my name's George Oros, not George Orwell, but if you read any Orwellian novels, it's very scary because what the federal monitor, who is, reports to HUD, the county pays for his services, but under the settlement, he is responsible to HUD. He is interpreting the settlement, so is the court, to say that not only do we have to do this settlement, but that Rob Astorino has to be a cheerleader for it. And to that end, he's been disappointed, the monitor, that Rob's not out there cheerleading for the settlement, that Rob's out there pointing out letters that, it's not Rob's words, he takes the letters that HUD has sent to the county about what we're supposed to do, and he's told the public, which is his job as the chief elected official, to tell the public what these letters say and what HUD wants to do. So the monitor took a taped deposition of him and a couple other county officials, including Ned McCormick, our communications director, and basically cross-examined him under videotape. That transcript of what was said was revealed about 6-8 months ago. The monitor felt that these tapes should be released to the public, even though the agreement when the depositions were taken, or whatever you want to call them, was that they would be just transcribed and that would be it. And he said, no, I think now, because Astorino has not done a good job educating the public, because we don't understand this settlement, these tapes need to be revealed because they will show the public that what he has said in some public forums is not exactly what the settlement says. So we're fighting that. That's the number one issue, because we feel, quite frankly, the only reason these tapes will be released is for political purposes. If Rob runs for governor, and we all know this, he had 8.5 hours of video deposition in front of a panel of lawyers. We all know 8.5 hours of sitting there with anybody questioning you, at some point you're going to say something that you probably should not have said, and if you thought a little more, you might not have said. It's one thing to read it black and white in a 500-page transcript. It's another thing for somebody to take that soundbite and run it on TV over and over and over again. So we're fighting that. We're going to the Second Circuit Court of Appeals on this to see if we can prevent that from happening. But probably more disturbing, that's disturbing in itself, that an elected official who the people of this county elected because of what he said about this settlement is being told by the Department of Justice that you can't say that. That's basically what they're saying. They're asking us to remove press releases that Rob has published over the years. They're telling us that he has to go out there and say certain things about this settlement. And it's really very chilling when you think about it. It's one thing to say, you've got to do certain things in a settlement. It's another thing to say you have to like it. It's sort of like, if you were a kid and your mother made you take bad medicine, and you had to tell her, I really enjoyed this, Mom. The second thing we're in court, we're going to go to the Second Circuit on. Last Friday, you may have seen Judge Cote, who is the original crafter of this settlement agreement that Andy Spano agreed to. She is directing, we have this thing called the analysis of impediments. I hope you all know the history and background of the settlement. The 750 units of housing, which we are on track. We've met every benchmark along the way. We've exceeded it. We had a meeting just at 2 o'clock this afternoon with our folks, and we right now look like we're projected by December 31st to have that 750 units. But what they're saying now is that this analysis of impediments, of which we have done 8 of them, HUD has never liked it, and the settlement claims, doesn't claim, the settlement states that the analysis of impediments will be done by the county acceptable to HUD. HUD has never accepted our analysis of impediments because despite our best efforts, despite engaging Pace Law School and the Land Use Institute there, despite all we've done, we have looked at the zoning of not only the 31 communities under the settlement, but of all of the municipalities in Westchester County. We cannot find anything in their zoning that points to it being exclusionary. And HUD doesn't like that because, quite frankly, HUD's goal under this current presidential administration is to turn upside down local zoning. It is to urbanize suburban areas. It is to say that it is not, it's wrong to have restrictions on multifamily housing anywhere in a municipality, regardless of whether it's infrastructure reasons, environmental reasons, whatever the reasons may be. So we have done this analysis of impediments 8 times. HUD has rejected all 8. And now what happened is the monitor went to court and said, we need to do this analysis of impediments, and the only way it's going to get done is if I do it as the monitor or a consultant does it that I approve. And that's what the judge ruled, that Westchester County will have to hire a consultant who the federal monitor agrees is acceptable, so we know what that means, and then go forth and do this analysis of impediments. Now, couple of things you should know about analysis of impediments. Under the Obama administration, they did away with the analysis of impediments because they thought it wasn't stringent enough. Secondly, we are no longer taking federal housing money. That was a decision Rob Astorino made several years ago. It's like, you know what, we're not going to do these analysis. We're not taking the money with all these strings attached. We'd rather not have the money than have the federal government's hands in everything we're trying to do with housing. So our view is, well, why would we do this? Because we're never going to apply for the federal money anyway. And secondly, the federal government itself says we're not even using this standard anymore to grant federal monies. And one of the great things, you know, you had this gentleman, John Anthony, here, who was fantastic, and I really appreciate Howard bringing him. And I was telling Howard before the meeting, you know, Rob's a very busy guy, and oftentimes I get calls from people like Howard to set up meetings. Sometimes I give them lame excuses, we don't do it. Sometimes I do set it up, but very often Rob's like, you know, I gotta go to the next thing. He's there 10 or 15 or 20 minutes, and that's good. He spent an hour and a half almost with John Anthony because he was so thrilled with what he was saying. And John Anthony, and I guess I hope you're all on his emails. There are other municipalities now throughout the country rejecting HUD money because they're not going to agree to do this nonsense that Washington wants us to do. So anyway, getting back to this, so now we're stuck with this situation. We have 30 days to pick someone to do our analysis of impediments, subject to veto of a federal monitor who works strictly for HUD. We know what that's, once this monitor hires the analysis, the consultant doing the analysis of impediments, we know what it's going to say. It's going to say we have exclusionary zoning. It's going to say that we have to have as of right multifamily housing throughout this county. And just think of that. Let's put aside what it does to your property values because we know what that's going to do. And one thing to Rob's credit, he never talks about crime or this type of element coming into a neighborhood. What he talks about is the very realistic things we have to face in Westchester County. I live north of 287. When you go north of 287, you're in a New York City watershed. You're in areas without public sewers, some places without public water, no mass transit what to speak of. Why are you going to build 17, 18, 40 unit apartment buildings up there where people can't get to a job, you can't put proper sewers in, you can't even give them clean water? So there's a whole host of reasons why this doesn't make any sense, but quite frankly, the current administration in Washington wants to break the back of local zoning. That's all it comes down to. And they look at things in a very, I suppose in their view it's idyllic, to me it's idiotic view that somehow, you know, we have to have the same thing everywhere because that's the only way people get ahead. And the way we look at it is, to me, with housing, look, I would love to live in a 5-bedroom house in Bronxville, but I'll never be able to afford it. And so to me, it's never been a question of black or white. And by the way, I don't know how many of you know, I was on the Board of Legislators when the Spano settlement came in, and at the time, I voted against it. At the time on the floor of the legislature, I said there's about 105 reasons to vote against this. I now know I underestimated it. There are a lot of reasons that have not had this settlement, but to me, it's never about black or white, it's about green. If you have the money in this county, you can afford to live anywhere. And no one's going to stop you And Rob Astorino has very much publicly said, if there's discrimination, if real estate brokers are steering people away from neighborhoods, we will enforce those laws. But the reality is, you know, there are certain, whatever it is, my mom always told me, life's not fair. You know, you can't always get what you want. I'm not quoting Mick Jagger now, but you can't always get what you want, but the reality is you can't. And we cannot, there's nothing we can do necessarily without bankrupting this country to change that. The best thing is to give as much economic opportunity to every person in this country and have them be able to make the money that they want or they need or whatever they want to do to buy the type of home that they want, wherever it is they want to do.
When you say exclusionary, is this...
I don't say exclusionary.
No, I mean,
HUD
but you're
does.
just saying that they're saying that.
Yes.
Does that mean that they're looking for something that says we don't let Jewish people live in Bronxville, we don't let...
Well, that's what we thought exclusionary zoning meant. That's, to me, what exclusionary zoning means.
Right, so that's what exclusionary means
No,
then.
what they're saying is, they have a theory called disparate impact. And they're saying, basically what they're saying is certain people don't have the wherewithal to get ahead. And therefore, we have to dumb down everybody else. And I disagree with that.
Everybody else.
Yeah, I disagree with that, because I think what we need to do is give everybody equal opportunity, because quite frankly, we're all given God-given gifts, and I don't care what nationality you are, what race, what religion, you have the ability, if you apply yourself in this country, as long as the playing field's level, to get ahead. And, you know, you can own that house in Bronxville with 5 bedrooms, or you could not, you know, depending what you want to do. So what they're saying is that it's exclusionary because we are not allowing a certain socioeconomic level of person to live everywhere.
But we're not letting them, they can't afford it.
Well, yeah, but they're saying because you don't have cheap, affordable, multifamily housing in certain communities, otherwise they would live there.
No, I understand what you're saying.
That's their theory.
But what I don't understand is which part do they not understand of...
You got blinders on.
You gotta ask them.
They don't care.
They don't want to understand.
You know what, and you know with these...
It's all about power and
They
control.
understand though when they build their land trusts, right? And so can't somebody like, you know, slap them in the face and say no more of these land trusts? We know what you're doing, you're protecting your backyard.
Correct.
So that there's no properties going there, so
Correct.
go to them, well, you guys are doing this, so here, you've protected this area, but that's protecting it from, and put it out there and let people know. I'm sick and tired of seeing these land trusts, and if you want to know how much they spend on their parties, forget it, it's disgraceful. And so, because we do a lot of their events, and I'm sitting here aggravated because I know that this is making this little area, because there's a red fox in the woods, so now they're not going to be able to put up this housing that they're requiring us to have.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that people need to know that's what's going on with those land trusts, because they will go to it thinking, oh, we're doing such a wonderful thing for the fox. You know, they don't know that they're screwing themselves.
Yes, sir.
The judge that made that ruling that says you have to have your candidate approved by the monitor. Number one, is there no way to appeal that judge's decision?
We are appealing. We are applying for a stay in the Second Circuit, and you know, we'll see if we get the stay. The last case we had, we won in the Second Circuit, overturned Judge Code. So, but you have to understand, Judge Code is the one who fashioned this settlement back in 2009. So she's very passionate about seeing this thing go through. And our best relief has always been the Second Circuit. So we're going up there. I think the papers are going to be filed on Friday or Monday with the Second Circuit, trying to get a stay of 30 days. And then let's see where it plays out after that. Yes, ma'am.
Is there any way you can get the monitor changed? Just somebody that's
Not under the agreement. The monitor, under the settlement, it's one of my 101 reasons I was against it, is somebody who is acceptable to HUD and can be only fired by HUD, released by HUD.
So will you just be able to buy time until there's a new administration and hopefully a better administration?
Well,
I mean, would
I
that
don't
make
know.
a difference?
I mean, I don't know what you mean by buying time. I mean
November.
Yeah, no, I know what you mean by the time frame. But
I mean, I don't know, I'm just wondering whether
listen, we
that
were
would make a
hoping
difference.
4 years ago, because if you remember, Mitt Romney, whose father was a secretary of HUD, one of his campaign things was, I'm gonna dismantle HUD. So, you know, had he won 3 years ago, we would probably be in a different situation because HUD and the Department of Justice would take a different tack. So, yeah, could things change then? Yeah, but I don't know how long, you know, the court has deadlines, the court has things, you can't just
Right,
run
that's what I
out
was
the clock,
wondering, is
you
it
know?
something that's close, or is it?
Yeah, I mean, her judge, her order said within 30 days we're to hire a consultant to do this AI, so, and the monitor, now, day 28, we put somebody, he says no, but the problem
That's what I was
is,
thinking.
well, but she's very aggressive, she's gonna come in, he'll go to court and say, this is the consultant I want, and she's gonna say, so ordered, and we're stuck with somebody that is gonna probably
Be on
find
the side.
exclusionary zoning everywhere,
Yeah.
including this. There should be more than one bar in a bar, there should be at least 2 or 3 here for, I'm kidding. It's an attempt at humor, very lame, John. yes.
George, is there something under the settlement that allowed her to mandate that a consultant be selected? I mean, on what grounds is she doing that?
Well, on the grounds of this, the monitor is, well, you bring an interesting point up, because quite frankly, we feel the monitor has, pardon this expression, but it's one I always learned, is kind of bastardize his role. I was a legislator. He came, I remember being at a committee meeting where he came down there, and he said basically his role is to be the conciliator, to bring the sides together, to make sure we make things work. He's actually become an advocate for the people who bought the original suit, and that really, quite frankly, was not the way his role was portrayed to the legislature. So he's taken it upon himself, and when are you a lawyer?
No.
No, thank God. I'm a lawyer. But, and it scares me, you know, when you read, particularly when you're up against the federal government, who's got resources out the wazoo. And when I read this settlement, and you see all these things where it's so open to interpretation, and it's so open to what does this mean, what does that mean? You know, the county left itself open in 2009 to all of this. And you know, it was a bipartisan vote. There were 3 Democrats that joined with the Republicans. Unfortunately, at the time, we only had 4 Republicans on the board. But 3 Democrats broke rank. An interesting thing, out of the, there were 7 of us that voted no on the settlement. And, no, I'm sorry, it wasn't 7. Yeah, it was 7. 7 of us that voted no on that settlement. 6 of us were lawyers on that board. Only one of the people who was not a practicing lawyer, Mike Kaplowitz, but he had a law degree, voted for it. The rest of the lawyers, Marty Rogowski, Democrat, Tom Abenanti, Democrat, I'm trying to think who the 3rd Democrat was, but he was a lawyer too. All the lawyers read this and said, oh my God, this thing is so freaking open-ended, we're gonna get clobbered somewhere down the road. And they were right.
So that's what you're saying, it's so open-ended.
It's so open-ended. And once you're under a federal consent decree, that judge who fashioned that consent decree it's like dealing with the Wizard of Oz. I mean, you're dealing with somebody who's got absolute powers, can hold the county in contempt, can fashion whatever they think is to them a reasonable settlement. Your only avenue of relief is going to the Second Circuit Court of Appeals and eventually maybe the Supreme Court.
It sounds like you're pretty confident in the second.
No, I'm not. I'm never confident with judges. Are you?
I just want to tell you a funny anecdote. Mr. Johnson.
I hope it's funny because we need some humor.
He was escorted around North Castle by the town board members who were so proud to have him in their car. And he Johnson.
Oh yeah, okay.
He is the monitor, Mr.
Yeah.
Johnson. And he was
By the way, he
looking-
lives in one of the most affluent, I'm a Jersey guy,
Right.
one of the most affluent communities in New Jersey.
I figured. He was looking for the town of Kensico, which is buried underneath the dam.
By the way, you should have taken him there and left him there. But
He
that's,
wanted to know where it was. And they said, look at the water. You know, it was flooded when the dam was built. But he didn't even know that. That's how his map showed the town. That's how archaic
Well,
and how ill-informed these
I don't know
people
how
are.
many of you know Warren Lucas, the town supervisor? Okay. So he was having this debate because they were on the list of not having excluded. So he called them on and says, come up here. And the monitor said, wow, look at all this open space. He goes, do you know this is New York City watershed?
See?
This is providing water to all of those, you know, less affluent people that live in the Bronx and the Queens and Brooklyn. We can't build here even if we wanted to. We have a watershed agreement that says we can't. Oh. Yes, Stephen.
That's a great example, and I think that the final comeback is, and without some of local planning and zoning, there could be no watersheds, this would just be mass housing.
Right.
So there's a logic to what we do here. I just have a quick couple of questions for you. Number one, in the public, in the Westchester public, we're getting New York State for now. I'm assuming that Rob's not running for governor.
Don't assume that.
I'm just saying for the purposes of this
Oh, okay.
controversy, who in Westchester County really cares? Have you polled this? Is this a very big issue locally?
It is a very big issue. It's a big issue, and it crosses party lines. It crosses. Look, people, you work hard, you sacrifice, you do what you can to make a home for your family. And look, I live in the town of Cortland. The only reason I live there is because I couldn't afford to live anywhere in the south, but I wanted to be in Westchester County. So once you own that property that you worked so hard for, it's just a natural instinct that you want to protect it. You don't want suddenly, I'm in a single family house, to have somebody come in and say, well, the zoning here, you know what, we can now have multifamily housing here and rental units here. Because if I wanted that, I would have bought something cheaper in some other community and just lived in an apartment building or whatever it might be. So it's definitely on people's minds. And a lot of people don't like to talk about it because they feel, oh my God, if I say that, I'm going to be construed as racist or elitist or whatever it is. But the reality is, most people work very hard to get that little quarter acre or half acre in that home, and people will do what they can to protect that.
I read a coverage of this in the Rising papers, the Rising chain. I find them to be somewhat sympathetic, if you can understand what they're saying. But the last article about the 10 controversial units in Mamaroneck, whether to count them because they began to, the only word that comes to mind is Kafka. It's absurd. You can't cover this in an 8-page weekly newspaper. Is there any way for your side, our side, to convey this absurdity?
Well, what happened is, it's ironic because some of the Democrats on the legislature that voted for this settlement then voted to stop this project, which would have brought us 10 more units closer to the 750 we need.
Exactly.
They were saying that they had heard that the monitor might not count these. First of all, the monitor is not the arbiter of whether they count. And we already won a battle in the Second Circuit on this very issue, where the monitor said, these units don't count because they don't have final building permits. We said, well, we say they do. Judge Cote, of course, who will not do anything to get this settlement done, because I think really wants to kind of crucify the county, said, oh no, they don't count. We went to the Second Circuit. The Second Circuit said, in fact, they do count. They've met all the criteria that's in the settlement. They count, and that's the end of it. So for those legislators, they were disingenuous, whether they heard a rumor or not. The fact is, it's not them. Even if the monitor had publicly said, which he never did, these will not count, they still may have counted. And we were of the mind, let's get these done. We got to get to the 750, and it's a shame because I'll tell you this: if we come up 10 units short on December 31st and start getting fined, those legislators should have their feet held to the fire. That's
Just
for
last
sure.
point.
Yeah.
Spano, ex-county exec.
Yes.
He seems to be getting a free ride. I'm sure he's enjoying this. This is the reason. This is the excuse for him having lost. Is there any way to rope him in, because he's such an easy person to embarrass? His public persona doesn't seem to be awfully positive following the election, with the gold rings and the private detail. Is there any way to pull him in?
I don't know what that accomplishes. I mean, right now our focus is on getting the units built. The other argument we try to use with the feds is this: if our zoning was so exclusionary, how are we meeting all these benchmarks? And I don't know how many of you, is anybody here a developer or a builder or a lawyer for?
Yeah, that's why we're sitting here.
Yeah, let me tell you something. I mean, in my former life, I was a land use lawyer. Even to get a simple subdivision in this county and going before all the hoops you got to jump through.
Planning boards.
Year, 2 years, 3 years. Well, but Mount Vernon's not in the settlement because they're okay. So you go through all these other communities. So what these guys don't understand, the fact that we are now at we're 68 units short of the 750 right now in 5 years. Think about that. In a county where it is so difficult to get approvals for anything. Now, granted, some of them we're buying or we're maybe pre-approved subdivisions, and they hadn't built the units yet, so we're now saying, okay, we'll buy these lots and make them affordable. But nonetheless, it's an arduous process. And these folks in Washington, they don't understand it or don't want to understand it. And to me, if we had recalcitrant, is that the right word? Did I say it right?
Recalcitrant.
I sound like, what's that guy, Norm Crosby, the comedian who didn't know how to say words? Anyway, if we had recalcitrant, whatever, municipalities, there's no way we would be close to the 750, because they would have fought every one of these developments. And Rob Astorino is always taking the tack that, why would I sue these municipalities? They're cooperating. The minute I sue one of them, don't you think the others are going to say, well, they're going to pull back. They're not going to work with us and get things done. So,
I have a silly question. And
I'll give you a silly answer.
I know. I've kind of wondered the same about the situation in Yonkers with the housing that they have there. So the first person that moves in has to meet certain requirements. But then what happens when I don't want to live here anymore? Do I sell? Do I have to sell it for cheaper even though
you have to sell it for cheaper.
it's...
What happens, here's how it works, just so you understand. So when we have one of these, let's say a housing development in one of these municipalities, so people enter a lottery, all right? You have to have certain income requirements.
Right.
Now here's what happens. So maybe 150 people go in for let's say 10 units. At the end of that, we pick, the first 10 get picked. Right? The first group, well, you really lied about your income. You make more, so you're out. The second group, you're okay. Can you get a mortgage? Nope, can't. You have such a bad credit history, even Johnny the loan shark ain't making a loan to you. You go down to the third. So by the time you get through it, all right? So finally you find some people to get it. The other problem we have with a lot of them, somebody who raised their hand when I said North Salem? Okay, yeah, okay. So, Howard. You're, and I'm not even going to use race. You could be a white person. You grew up in the Bronx, in an Italian neighborhood. You're a high school graduate. You work in a body shop. You have 2 kids. Your mother-in-law lives up the street, watches the 2 kids. You can walk to your body shop for your job. You do whatever. You go into this lottery, you go up to North Salem. Oh, wow, look at this. I can live up in North Salem. But where I work is in the Bronx. How the hell am I getting there? And by the way, when I want to take my kids out to dinner, where's the McDonald's? And, you know, there's so many practical things that people don't think about. You can artificially put someone somewhere, you know, by underwriting the cost of their home, but can they afford everything else that comes living in a certain area?
Right.
Where there's no mass transit, where there's no, you know, inexpensive restaurants, where there's no child care. You know, whenever any outside entity tries to fool around with nature, it doesn't work. So, I'm sorry.
And it's also not good for that person and his family, the man of that caliber living in an area where everybody's driving a Mercedes down the street, and he's got an old car that he changes the oil on himself on weekends. What does that do for his personal esteem?
Yes. So again, to me, the bottom line with all of this is giving people the economic opportunity. So the guy in this body shop has the ability to work hard enough and make enough so that he owns a body shop and opens a body shop in North Salem and then buys a home there.
Yeah.
Not that we're going to artificially give him the money or subsidize him to live somewhere where he's not going to feel comfortable, where he's not going to be able to make it. We're almost setting the person up for failure. So, you know, that's just my philosophy on life.
Absolutely right.
Thank you. I think Trump's still looking for a roommate. Whoa, I hope not a roommate. A running mate. By the way,
I think it irks Obama that the suburbs consistently tend to be Republican.
I agree.
And this is a way to turn them Democrat.
I think that's part of it. I think there's a political agenda. But I don't subscribe conspiracy and evil motives. I think sometimes people have good intentions. You know, they think they do want to help these people. I think we just look at it a different way. You know, to me, I don't think I'm helping somebody if I help give them, you know, underwriting the cost of their home in a place where they're not equipped to handle all the other things that come with that. To me, I would do a better job if I could help them get a good education, get them into a good career or a good trade, and give them that opportunity to make it on their own. Not that I'm underwriting the cost of something. Because, look, most of you have children, right? To me, the worst thing you could do is give your kids money and say, do whatever. The better thing is to say, if you earn this, I'll match that, and I'll help you get ahead. But you gotta initiate, you gotta do. And I think, I think people, I think that the motives are the same. We want people to get ahead and succeed. And it's just that some people think that the answer is we have to just hand them money or whatever, and I don't think that's the answer. Yes, ma'am.
Hi, George.
Hi.
Cindy Ashley.
Yes.
I agree with what you're saying, because it's pretty much like saying, it's better to teach someone how to fish than to give them a fish to eat, because it doesn't help the recipient or the person that you are giving that to. It may appear good, but in the end, it's really holding that person back from actually being able to learn how to hook the bait, do the, find the right
yes.
thing, and then, so forth and so on. So I certainly agree with what you are saying. And then, of course, there are different characters of people, so there are people who would appreciate the help, and then they'll take that as a stepping stone, if you will, to do more, to have more, and to have better. So you have these two different dynamics going, so you kind of have both of the two evils.
Yeah, listen, none of it is easy, and you're right, everybody's individual character and personality, but I think that
it's better to teach them how to fish.
It is. Listen, I have faith in people. I think that people left to their own devices will do very well.
But I'm going to tell you also, not to cut you off, George, but I also believe that a lot of times when you have individual groups or different organizations that are doing these kinds of policies, it's more of, to me, and this is just my personal, that's my timer telling me my meter's up, it's my personal thing that it's called false generosity. Because sometimes they feel like they have to be generous because of their own perspective, but in actuality you're hurting the person. You're not really helping the person because it's not real.
Well,
am I right?
Yeah, you're right. It's almost enabling an alcoholic, like somebody.
Exactly.
You're feeding into them, not taking care of themselves, not facing what they have
enabling.
to face.
It's called enabling.
And listen, I wish I could have been Steve Jobs. I wish I could have been Henry, well, not really Henry Ford, I don't really like him. But what I'm saying is, you are who you are. And you have to recognize and work within your limitations and what you can do, and just strive to be the best you can. And we're not all going to be brain surgeons, we're not all going to be lawyers, we're not all going to be school teachers. But you know what? You can work in a body shop and be the best at it. And do very well. You can be a beautician and be the best at it and do very well. And I think, unfortunately, in our society, we put too much of a premium on people having to be these crazy things where we all need all these other, we need landscapers, we need I certainly could use a beautician. But I mean, I'm just saying that, but we put this premium and we put this pressure on young people too. Instead of saying, like, being a carpenter, look at this, somebody did all this work in here. It's great work, and it's respectable work, and it's something valued.
Yes, nice point. Great presentation. I think we're fully forward. I think the same question was posed to Phil before. How can we be used? I'm sure you have ideas in the future going forward.
Listen, the only way we're going to change things is we have to work from the grassroots up. And, getting if we get some of that filter Congress, that's a great step. I do think, though, one of the things we have to focus on is at the local level, because as much as we don't like to say, candidates are groomed from the local level up. And if we find people like-minded like us, run them for town board, run them for council, run them for county legislature. If we had more people, dare I say it, like me, on the county legislature in '09, we wouldn't need this housing settlement. Because one vote decided that.
Yeah.
And we had one other legislator vote no. Many of us, especially the lawyers, were convinced if we went to court on this, eventually we would have won and not been in this freaking mess. By the way, but just so you all know, we've already spent $80 million to comply with this settlement. $80 million!
To that point, about 2 years ago, a year and a half ago, they had a hearing in Mamaroneck Town Hall. All the local politicals were there. The monitor wasn't there. Some of the people involved in this whole complex of issues, settlements, lawsuits. And they were telling much, and they were trying to be even-handed. It was a pretty interesting group, and I just asked the question, I said, imagine for a second, everybody, if you just took all the money devoted to the monitor, then earning $900 an hour, not $1,000. Since gone up. And all the other expenses, the cost of coat, your cost of defense, our cost
the cost of our planning department, and our DPW, and all this, our law department.
and the overtime and everything else.
Yes.
What if they just took all this money, and I don't think anybody would object, no one I've met, take this money, put it in a lottery, take this population of people, run a lottery, sort of how they make charter school out of this, how you get into the charter schools, this open application process, and just award a down payment to 100 lucky people per year to go into the market like you're talking about. And I have to tell you, I don't think anybody disagreed with me. It was a little unformed, it was kind of out of the air, but I think if people understand that so much money is being thrown at this, and it's being used in such a wasteful, scurrilous manner on lawyers, who everybody wants to hate.
The only people making money on this are the lawyers and are the developers.
And
the developers are making a bundle of this.
Lower than lawyers.
Because we're buying, the county's paying a premium, because we gotta get this done. So we're paying a premium to a developer, we're paying for the land cost, we're paying for infrastructure, and he ends up selling it, he's making a nice, neat profit, a guaranteed profit. And by the way, somebody else asked about that, how the thing works. Here's how it works. So and this is why it's a problem, and this is why some people don't want this house. So I could go into parts of Peekskill where I live and buy a house probably even cheaper than the affordable housing we're building in Salem. I buy the house in Peekskill, it's open market. So I make a few improvements, 5 years later the market goes up, I sell it at 10 or 15, 20% profit, move to the next town, wherever I go, Solms. You buy the house in North Salem, you're capped at the CPI. So after 5 years, I can only sell it for 4% or 6%.
Now these houses sold
So
yet?
why should I go there when I could go somewhere else for the same price and maybe make, move up in the world? That's, when I got married, I lived in an apartment. Our first house was a modest house. The next house, that's the whole idea of what you do. But if my profit or my gain was capped, where am I going? What are we doing to these people? We're not helping them.
There are
We're
10
keeping them
units.
down is what we're doing.
Yeah, there are 10 units in North Castle that are about to be put on the market. They're houses, 2-bedroom house, and the price is going to be $270,000. It'll be very interesting to see how they sell and what's going to happen there.
I used up too much time too. It was a good evening here.
Thank you so much.
All right, thanks.
A lot of fun.